In the summer of 1972, Neville Goddard stood before a small audience in Los Angeles and said something that has puzzled his students ever since. He told them that before you can imagine the thing you desire, you must first enter a state he called the lull, a complete suspension of the senses, a stillness so profound that you cannot tell where your body ends and the room begins. He said this state was not meditation. It was not relaxation. It was abandonment, a deliberate drowning of the outer world until only consciousness remained. Half a century later, quantum physicists speak of the vacuum state, not emptiness, but a field of infinite potential from which all particles emerge and into which all particles return. They call it zero-point energy, the ground state of reality itself. And they tell us that at this level, nothing is fixed. Everything is probability. Everything is possible. Now, here is the question that made you click on this video. Did Neville Goddard, a mystic who spoke in the language of the Bible and Blake, somehow describe the same void that quantum theory points to? And if he did, what does that mean for the way you enter it, and the way you emerge from it with your desire made real? Let's find out. Welcome to Neville Goddard Universe, the channel where we take Neville's teachings and trace them across the great esoteric, mystical, and scientific traditions of the world. Not to prove Neville right, but to recognize the deeper unity beneath the surface differences. Because the truth, as Neville himself would say, has been spoken in many languages, and when you learn to hear it, you begin to see that every mystic, every sage, every quantum theorist who has stared long enough into the fabric of reality comes back with the same report. Today, we are exploring one of Neville's most misunderstood and most profound teachings, the void state, what it actually is, why it matters, and how it parallels the quantum field that physicists describe as the womb of all creation. We will go deep into Neville's later lectures, pull out the practical steps he gave for entering this state, and then widen the lens to see how this teaching resonates with the language of quantum mechanics, the mystic traditions of the East, and the zero-point reality that modern science is only beginning to understand. This is not surface-level content. This is a genuine exploration. And if what we uncover here resonates with you, if you feel that old thrill of recognition when two streams of truth converge, then take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It keeps the work alive, and it tells the algorithm that there are still people out there hungry for something deeper than quick fixes and manifestation hacks. Let's walk this path together. Let's begin with Neville himself. Because, before we can map this teaching onto quantum theory or Eastern mysticism, we need to be absolutely clear about what Neville actually taught, not what modern interpreters have turned it into. When Neville spoke of the void, he was not using the word casually. He was pointing to a specific inner state that he considered essential to the act of creation. And he described this state most vividly in his later lectures, particularly in the period from 1970 to 1972, when his teaching became more distilled, more focused on the mechanics of consciousness itself. He called it the lull state, a condition of such profound inner stillness that the senses are not merely quieted, they are abandoned. Listen to how he described it in a 1972 lecture. You must reach a state where you are not aware of your body, you are not aware of the room, you are not aware of time. You are suspended in consciousness alone, and from that suspension you imagine. This is not meditation in the way most people understand the word. Meditation, as it is commonly taught, is about witnessing your thoughts, about becoming the observer, about calming the mind. Neville's lull state is something else. It is the deliberate withdrawal of attention from the sensory world, not to observe it from a distance, but to dissolve it entirely. To let the outer man fall away so completely that only the inner man remains. And that inner man, Neville insisted, is God. Now, why does this matter? Because most people who attempt to use Neville's method of imagining the wish fulfilled are doing it from the wrong starting point. They sit down, close their eyes, and immediately begin visualizing. They construct a scene. They add details. They try to feel it, and they wonder why it doesn't work. They wonder why the scene feels forced, why the feeling is shallow, why nothing changes in the outer world. Neville would tell you the answer. You are still imagining from the senses. You are still in the world, trying to imagine your way out of it. But creation does not work that way. Creation begins in the void, in the lull, in that suspension of all sensory input where consciousness is free to assume without resistance. Let me give you a concrete example from Neville's own archive. A woman once approached him after a lecture and told him she had been trying for weeks to imagine herself into a new home. She described the house in detail. She saw herself walking through the rooms. She felt the texture of the furniture, but nothing happened, no change, no movement in the outer world. Neville asked her a single question. Where were you when you did this imagining? She looked confused. In my living room, she said. I sat on my couch and closed my eyes. And Neville smiled. Then you were still in your living room. You were still in your body, on your couch, in the world you are trying to leave behind. You must first leave that world entirely. You must enter the lull. And only then, when you are nowhere and everywhere at once, can you imagine from the end. He told her to try again, but this time to spend the first 10 minutes doing nothing but sinking, letting go, abandoning the weight of her body, the pressure of the cushions beneath her, the sounds of the room, not fighting them, but letting them dissolve. And when she reached the point where she could no longer tell if her eyes were open or closed, when she felt as though she were floating in a great silence, only then should she begin to construct her scene. She did, and within 2 weeks she had a contract on the house she desired. This is the teaching. The void is not a mystical abstraction. It is a practical necessity, because the void is the state of pure potential, the ground from which all creation arises. And if you do not first enter that ground, your imagining is only rearranging the furniture of the world you already inhabit. Neville said it plainly in The Power of Awareness. Creation is finished. All that you could ever desire already exists in the infinite states of consciousness. Your task is not to create, but to select. And selection requires that you first withdraw from the world of the senses and enter the world of imagination, which is the only world that is real. The void, then, is the doorway. The lull is the threshold. And abandonment, not effort, not concentration, but abandonment, is the key. Now let us shift the lens and look at what quantum physics has to say about the nature of reality at its most fundamental level. Because when you do, something extraordinary happens. The language changes, but the teaching does not. Quantum mechanics tells us that at the subatomic level, particles do not have fixed positions or defined states until they are observed. Before observation, they exist in what is called a superposition, a condition of pure possibility, where all potential outcomes coexist simultaneously. And beneath even this level of quantum uncertainty lies what physicists call the quantum vacuum, or the zero-point field. This is not emptiness. It is not nothing. The quantum vacuum is a seething field of energy, a substrate of reality from which particles spontaneously emerge and into which they dissolve. It is the ground state of the universe, the lowest energy level, and yet, paradoxically, it contains infinite potential. Physicists describe it as a field of fluctuating energy that never goes to zero. Even in the absence of matter, even in the absence of light, the field remains, vibrating, alive, full. The physicist David Bohm called it the implicate order. The mystic might call it the womb of creation. Neville called it consciousness. Now, here is where the parallel becomes impossible to ignore. When Neville spoke of the lull state, that suspension of the senses, that abandonment of the outer world, he was describing the same withdrawal from the manifest that quantum theory points to when it speaks of the collapse of the wave function. Let me explain. In quantum mechanics, a particle exists in a state of superposition, all possibilities at once, until the moment of observation. Observation collapses the wave function, and one possibility becomes actual. But what is observation really? Is it the physical act of looking? No. Observation, as physicists like John von Neumann and Eugene Wigner argued, is an act of consciousness. The observer is not separate from the system. The observer determines the outcome. Neville said the same thing in different words. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and the outer world will conform. The act of assuming, of entering into the state of the wish fulfilled, is the act of observation that collapses infinite possibility into a single actuality. But you cannot assume from the level of the senses. You cannot collapse the wave function while you are still entangled in the world of effects. You must first withdraw into the field itself, into the quantum vacuum, into the void, where all states are still possible and none are yet fixed. This is what Neville meant when he said, "Consciousness is the only reality." He was not speaking metaphorically. He was making the same claim that quantum mechanics makes, that the world you see is not the cause of your experience, it is the effect. The cause is the unseen field of consciousness, the void, the lull, the zero-point ground, from which all things arise. There is a line from the Upanishads that captures this perfectly. In the beginning, there was only the self, one without a second. It desired, may I become many. And from that desire, the world was born. The void is the self before it desires. The quantum field is the self in its ground state. And the act of imagining, of assuming, is the self's first movement toward manifestation. Neville would have recognized this teaching immediately. He quoted scripture in the same way. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word is not sound. It is consciousness declaring itself. It is the collapse of the wave function. It is the assumption that brings the invisible into the visible. Now, why does this matter for you? Because if the void is real, if the quantum field is not a metaphor but the actual substrate of reality, then entering it is not optional. It is the only way to create. You cannot manifest from the level of the senses any more than you can create a particle without first collapsing the wave function. The outer world is the shadow. The inner world, the void, the lull, the field of zero-point potential, is the light. And this is the secret that made you click on this video. The void is not a mystical state reserved for advanced practitioners. It is the starting point, the ground of all creation, the place where you and the quantum field are one. Neville said, "Try it." And quantum mechanics says the same thing in its own language. The observer and the observed are not separate. You are not in the world. The world is in you. And when you withdraw from the senses, when you enter the void, you do not become nothing. You become everything. Let's bring this home, because the teaching means nothing if you cannot apply it. Neville was a mystic, yes, but he was also ruthlessly practical. He gave specific instructions. He walked people through the process step by step. And so will we. What follows is a distillation of Neville's method for entering the lull state and planting a desire from that place of zero-point potential. This is drawn directly from his archive, from lectures given in the early 1970s when his teaching had become stripped of all excess, pure, essential. Here is how you do it. First, choose your desire. Be specific, not, "I want more money," but "I have $10,000 in my account." Not, "I want a relationship," but "I am married to the person I love." Neville insisted on specificity because specificity is selection. Remember, all states already exist. You are not creating, you are choosing. Second, construct a short scene, no more than 5 or 6 seconds. That implies the fulfillment of your desire. This is the scene you will replay in your imagination once you have entered the void. But notice, you do not begin with the scene. You begin with the void. The scene comes second. This is where most people fail. They rush to the scene. they skip the void. And their imagining has no power because it has no ground. Third, and this is the most important step, you must enter the lull. Neville recommended doing this at night, just before sleep, because the body is already preparing to let go. Lie down in bed, close your eyes, and begin the process of abandonment. Do not try to relax. Relaxation is still a bodily state. You are not trying to feel comfortable. You are trying to feel nothing. Let your attention drift away from your body. Notice the weight of your head on the pillow, and then let it go. Notice the rise and fall of your breath, and then let it go. Notice the sounds in the room, the hum of the air, the creak of the house, and let them dissolve into the background. Neville often suggested a simple technique. Imagine that you are sinking, not falling, but sinking, slowly, gently, as though you are being lowered into warm water. With each breath, you sink a little deeper, and as you sink, the outer world begins to fade. Your body becomes distant. The room becomes distant. Time becomes irrelevant. You will know you have entered the lull when you can no longer tell if your eyes are open or closed, when you feel suspended, when you are not here or there, but in a vast, silent, formless space. This is the void. This is the quantum field. This is consciousness in its pure, unconditioned state. And now, only now, you bring in your scene, but you do not visualize it from the outside. You enter it. You become it. If your scene is lying in bed beside the person you love, then you feel the warmth of their body next to yours. You feel the weight of their hand on your chest. You hear the sound of their breathing. You do not see yourself in the scene. You are in the scene. You are living it. You are it. And here is the key: you do not try to make it feel real. It already is real. You are not imagining something that will happen. You are remembering something that has happened. You are collapsing the wave function. You are selecting the state. You are speaking the word. Neville said to loop the scene, repeat it. Not mechanically, but gently. Let it play, and when it ends, let it begin again. Do this until you feel a quiet certainty, not excitement, not emotion, just certainty. The feeling that it is done. And then let it go. Fall asleep in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. This is the method. Void first, scene second, feeling third. Sleep last. Do not reverse the order. Do not skip the void. The void is the womb, the scene is the seed, and sleep is the gestation. Neville promised that if you do this faithfully, if you enter the lull and imagine from that place of pure potential, the outer world must conform. Not because you are forcing it, but because the outer world is only the shadow of the inner. And when the inner changes, the outer follows as naturally as the shadow follows the body. Try it. Tonight. Do not wait. Do not overthink it. Enter the void. Assume the feeling. And watch what happens. Step back with me for a moment. Look at what we have uncovered. Neville Goddard, a mystic who drew his language from the Bible and Blake, taught that creation begins in a void, a suspension of the senses, a state of pure consciousness from which all things arise. And quantum mechanics, the most precise scientific theory we have ever developed, tells us that reality itself emerges from a ground state of infinite potential, a field of zero-point energy where nothing is fixed until consciousness observes it. Two languages. One truth. This is not coincidence. This is recognition. And what it tells us is something that every great tradition has known, that the universe is not a machine. It is not a collection of dead matter moving according to blind laws. It is a living field of consciousness, and you are not a separate observer looking at it from the outside. You are the field observing itself. You are the void becoming form. You are the quantum collapse made flesh. The Kabbalists called this Ein Sof, the infinite, the no-thing from which all things arise. The Taoists called it the Tao, the emptiness that is full, the silence that speaks. The Vedantists called it Brahman, the ground of being, pure existence, consciousness bliss. And Neville called it I Am. All of them are pointing to the same place, the void, the field, the ground, the self. And all of them are telling you the same thing, that this ground is not somewhere else. It is not in the sky or in a temple or in a laboratory. It is in you. It is you. It is you. And when you learn to enter it, when you learn to abandon the world of the senses and rest in pure consciousness, you discover that you are not a creature of the world. You are the creator of it. This is why the teaching matters. Not because it gives you a technique to get what you want, but because it reveals what you are. You are not a body with a consciousness. You are consciousness with a body. And the body, and the world, and all the conditions you have called reality. These are only the outpicturing of the state you are occupying in consciousness. Change the state, and the world changes. Enter the void, and all things become possible. This is not magic. This is mechanics. The mechanics of consciousness. The mechanics of the quantum field. The mechanics of creation itself. And when you see this, when you truly see it, you realize that there is no gap between the mystic and the scientist, between Neville and the quantum theorist, between the ancient sage and the modern seeker. There is only the truth, spoken in different tongues. And the truth is this: you are the void made visible. You are the field made flesh. You are the Word. So here we are. You came to this video because the words void state and quantum field lit something up in you. And what we have discovered is not a metaphor, not a fantasy, but a convergence. A place where Neville's teaching and quantum mechanics say the same thing in different languages. The void is real, the field is real, and your consciousness is the bridge between them. Tonight, when you lie down to sleep, you have a choice. You can do what you have always done. Close your eyes, think your thoughts, and drift off into unconsciousness. Or you can do what Neville taught. You can sink into the lull. You can abandon the senses. You can enter the void. And from that place of infinite potential, you can assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not as something you hope will happen, but as something that already is. If this exploration has opened something in you, if you feel the old thrill of recognition when two streams of truth converge, then take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It keeps the work alive. It tells the algorithm that depth still matters. And it reminds me that there are still minds out there willing to go past the surface and into the silence where the real work begins. I am grateful for every one of you who walks this path with us. The void is not emptiness. It is fullness waiting to be named. The quantum field is not chaos. It is order waiting to be observed. And you are not a seeker of truth. You are the truth seeking itself. Enter the void. Assume the state. And watch the world rearrange itself to match the image you have held in the silence. Neville said it best, and we will end with his words. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and sleep in that assumption. And I promise you, on the authority of my own experience, the world will conform. Try it. Tonight. The void is waiting, and so is everything you have ever desired. Until next time, this is Neville Goddard Universe. The teaching is one, the truth is one, and you are it.